Life Audio.
Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. I'm Peggy Ployhar, your host, and today we're tackling a subject so many homeschooling parents can relate to, feeling overstimulated, overwhelmed, and unsure of how to model calm when life at home gets anything but peaceful. Our guest today is Whitney Whitten, a mom of four and a pediatric occupational therapist turned mom coach. With extensive training in sensory processing and special needs, Whitney initially used her expertise to support her children, but she quickly realized that as a highly sensitive mom, she needed those same tools for herself. Now she helps other overwhelmed and overstimulated moms find balance, reclaim their energy, and enjoy the freedom of homeschooling. Through her coaching and resources, Whitney empowers moms to build authentic connections with their kids while managing the demands of motherhood with more ease and confidence. Whitney, welcome to the show.
Hey, Peggy, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're going to be talking about managing parent overload and modeling calm at home. And I'm super excited about that. When I started my homeschooling journey, I had the biggest anger issue. And I thought, okay, somebody's going to die here before we finish our homeschooling years. And it really it's just a process that you have to go through self-discovery as a parent. And I love that that's part of your story, because we forget that it's not just our children who are learning at home, but it's us. And we have to model that. We have to be the one to initiate the change, because we can talk a lot about things, but if we aren't showing it, it's not happening. So I love
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think that is so true, because that's actually, it was a big realization for me, Peggy, because things really came to the forefront when I felt like I had to make a decision to either continue homeschooling or stop. And then I realized that unless I figured out what was going on with myself, it wasn't really homeschooling that was the problem. Motherhood. You can't stop being a parent, right? So
right.
as we homeschool our children, if we can figure out these things, homeschooling is really a place that can be a rapid growth area for us as moms if we lean into the growth opportunity. Otherwise, it could either make or break us, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, it is really true. And I think we just feel like there's just got to be some solution out there, not in here, out there, that's going to fix this. And then the more you try to just like purchase things or, do all these things, it just doesn't work long term. But when you take the time to really invest in yourself and in your family, that's when the change starts to happen. But it's not easy change, for sure. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey in that discovery yourself? Because I love that that's part of your story, and I'm sure there's kind of a story that goes with that.
Yeah. I like most areas of growth in life, it happened a little bit at a time. Particularly, I started realizing that I needed to start looking inward, as you said, instead of outward. During a really stressful time in my life. Things were out of my control. We had relocated away from a support system that we'd had that I had been able to rely heavily on. And so we moved, and I had 5 children, which would be 4 children in 5.5 years. So they're all very close in age, right?
Yes.
And at the time, we did not understand what was going on with one of my children and the kind of support that she needed. And it was during COVID. So it was all of these, just a whirlwind, where things are really spiraling out of control in a lot of ways. And I've tried several different things to support my children through that, because a big part of our story was the effects of extensive sleepless nights with my children.
Oh, wow.
So going to seek outside help for my children, what's going on, how can I support them through this? And I finally went to see a practitioner for myself, and she was listing off all of these things medically that were going on with me, adrenal fatigue, all of these things. And I said, but why? And she said, well, sweetheart, how could you not be stressed out? And I realized I had not taken time to step back and really assess the state of my situation.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That moment, I really just slowly started turning inward and remembering things about myself, I guess, throughout my life.
Yeah.
And that, somehow when we become mothers, we think that there's going to be this switch that flips and we are suddenly,
right
at 5 o'clock in the morning and we're happy and suddenly have figured out time management and all of these other things. And
right.
part of me was like, I thought that I must have suddenly outgrown any of my sensory sensitivities that I had always had.
Right.
I was trying to just muscle through life as a mom of 4 kids. And that combined with all the other stressors, I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. You hit that breaking point and that adrenal failure. I've been through it all too. And you aren't the superwoman you think you are.
Right.
And yeah.
So over the course of years, really started realizing, okay, well, I need to take the sensory support tools that I've been trying to get my children to use. I'm really the one that needs those. And I'm really the one that needs to be able to model the things that I'm trying to teach my children through, all these curricula that not only do we get bombarded with as homeschool mothers, but also as an occupational therapist, right? I have all of this other knowledge that, again, I'm going to be super mom because I know all this stuff, right? I know all these tools,
right. Mm-hmm.
But I was just a mess and I needed to figure out how to model it through my life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So parents thinking, listening to this, they're like, how do I determine if that's where I'm at? Are there some common things that, because I know, like when I've struggled with things in the past, you see those lists and then you go, oh, no, that's not me. I want you to be like real, like if this is going on, this is what you're dealing with more so, because I think we need a wake-up call, just like both of us had. It's like, oh, this is an issue. It isn't just somebody else or, for those people out there, but what can people be looking for in their own lives that are kind of indicators that you might be overloaded and you might be experiencing something more that needs to be dealt with?
So let's think about it kind of like a pyramid or maybe an iceberg. That sounds a little more
okay.
like if we're the Titanic rocking along, we're going to hit it, right? The tip of that iceberg that so many of us see is mom rage. We see moments where we do things or we say things that we're not proud of, that we know in another situation we wouldn't do that. That probably gets the most attention because of the mom guilt that comes along with that.
Absolutely.
But there's also another side where sometimes if we are in sensory overload or shutdown, it can look like more or less apathy, just having difficulty getting going, initiating tasks. It can look like having a hard time really engaging with our children in a meaningful way, even though we're there. So it can really go either way. And the second way just doesn't really get as much attention. But what draws us to homeschooling so many times is wanting that connection piece with our kids. And then when we aren't able to engage that way, it can lead us to feel guilty and at least unfulfilled in what we're doing.
Yeah, so true. And I'm sure that depends a little bit on personality type as to which route you tend to gravitate toward more.
Yes, you can explode or implode, right?
Right, exactly. But they all originate from the same thing. So those are good things to be thinking about, because I think sometimes we don't associate that with a long ongoing thing that's going on versus, oh, I just lost it. I've got to get more patience. That's what I've heard parents, tell me
Mm-hmm.
so much. And when you get down to the root of it, no, it really is. You've got a bigger issue that's underneath that's causing that
Right.
to crop up. And I love that iceberg analogy
Or
because,
kind of,
yeah,
I'm a very visual thinker. If you think of it like a mug, all throughout the day, we could be adding these things, and over time it's starting to fill up. And what we notice is the overflow, right?
right,
But like you're
exactly.
saying, over time, it is building up.
We will continue this conversation after a short break.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
Parenting can be tough, but no one should have to do it alone. With your support, families can thrive in Christ. Focus on the Family provides biblical wisdom, practical tools, and Christ-centered encouragement to parents navigating discipline, faith conversations, and everyday challenges. Together, we can equip families to grow stronger in faith and love. Help us equip parents to raise their children with biblical truth. Learn more at focusonthefamily.com/equipfamilies.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's lots of things in our house that can lead to this overwhelm, like sensory issues or other things going on. What kinds of things are going into that cup that we need to be aware of and start regulating?
Yeah. So I think that's probably why it's so hard as moms, because as adults, going into motherhood, we have a lot of control over our environment, and then motherhood happens and we don't.
Right.
Or we get married, or we're living with someone else, and before you know it, there's 5 other nervous systems under my roof, and they
Right.
don't all they don't all like it the way I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially if you have a child who's a sensory seeker, and if you
Yeah.
yourself are sensory sensitive, you might have a child that is wanting to be with you all day and climb you and pull on you. And if you're a sensitive person, that child's doing it out of love and fun and affection. And it's
Right.
adding some really big drops in that mug.
Uh-huh. Right.
Um, so feeling touched out like that, um, talked out. The education methods that I use for my children require me to listen a lot and
Oh,
discuss a lot.
yes.
So even though those are happy interactions,
Mhm.
I feel like I need a soundproof room in my house sometimes, and I don't have that. Um, so even things that aren't, you know, hard things, right? Like it's easy to think of hard things like our child having a hard time emotionally if they're yelling or hitting, but
Mhm.
sometimes it's the happy things that it
Right.
still can be a lot. It can be loud play in the
Mhm.
house. Um, yeah, those are probably some of the biggest things is the noise.
Right. For
Um,
me,
even
it was all the clutter.
oh yeah,
I have to have everything in its place. And when things were out of place, it just, I felt like, yeah, dumps in my bucket because it was like, I can't control this. This is beyond, and it's just my anxiety just whoo and way up.
the visual overstimulation that can come from that is
Hmm.
is a lot. And we want our children to be creative and play and build things and craft
Right.
things. And it does not take long. A lot of those projects can't be taken out and put away. It just stays out. And yeah, we have to figure out how to support our needs and accommodate for other people as well. So that's really where
Yes.
being able to control the environment has its limitations, I
It
suppose.
does. Absolutely.
So I think that having a safe place, I'm here in my bedroom, and in a smaller house like ours, that is my only safe place. As far as when I'm starting to feel really overwhelmed and overstimulated, I know specifically what I can come and do in here for just a few minutes. And at least there is a space where I can feel and regain that calm for myself.
Yeah. Well, and it's so empowering to know that that's what you're doing too, instead of just like retreating and then feeling guilty because you retreated and ran away from it. But it's not really you ran away from it. You were trying to reset, everything inside that was feeling so disordered. And then going back to, with a more calm understanding back into the chaos.
And that is how we model it for our children, is in that moment being able to understand a language that makes sense for them and communicate what's going on, and that we're meeting our needs. And here's what we're going to do. It doesn't have to be, a long drawn out conversation, but if it's language that I've practiced in calm moments with my children, then it's just a normal part of life. And then my child is also able, when they feel the same way, to do the same thing, because I've got both extremes in my house. I have kids who are seekers, I have kids that are avoiders, and we're with each other at the ages they are most day, every day. So they need to be able to understand their needs and how they can communicate and meet that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know for me, one strategy that I used was, because the clutter was the biggest thing probably for me, was that my kids could close their doors and I wouldn't have to look in their rooms. And also I got lots of big cupboards that things could just be shoved in. I didn't care what it looked like, as long as they were shut. I didn't see it.
Close it. That's right.
And so I just got to peace that whatever I didn't see was out of sight, out of mind. And so I'm sure there's other strategies for parents, based on other types of things that would avoid them. Do you have some top ones to share?
Yeah. One of my favorites is just to consider where we're sitting in the room. Again, out of sight, out of mind. Back to the visual piece. There are times when I want to be sitting at the table with my kids and I want to be facing the wall.
Yeah.
Because we school at our dining room table, and it's one large room. And if I'm sitting the other way, I can see the living room and what has blown up in there.
Oh, yes.
While we are doing that.
Before that has destroyed your front room.
Yeah. But it is so much, I can focus so much better and not feel that rising thermometer of overstimulation if I just don't see it. But on the other hand, if it's the auditory piece, if I'm starting to feel really overwhelmed by the noise, I like my back to the wall, because then I'm not getting the sound all the way around me.
Wow.
It's much easier than dealing with surround sound, because we don't realize that the importance of the auditory system and monitoring our environment all around us. It's the sensory system that helps us be able to do that. And whether we realize it or not, it's doing it. So if we can take some of the load off of it that way, then that helps, because, I use these a lot during the day to give myself a break. But I can't do that again during times when I'm teaching math at the table or whatever the situation is. So considering your own placement in the situation like that can be really helpful. Also, and back to placement, thinking about if I'm doing a read aloud and I'm sitting with my kids, there are days when I don't want to be snuggly. So guess where I sit? I sit in my chair where only one of me can fit. Now I might have a child that still wants to climb in my lap, but I can respectfully ask for space. that's different than sitting in the middle of the couch. Sitting in the middle of the couch is inviting, again, more of that contact. And I just kind of have to check in with myself and see, okay, well, what am I feeling like? Which would be better for me right now?
Yeah. I'm one of I didn't like my kids when they were babies because they had to be held so much. And I just couldn't, I had so much guilt over that for so long, because of that struggle. And I love you sharing that story, of your own struggles in that area, because I think a lot of moms do get that. And we feel like we're not being good moms because we don't want to hug our kids. But you get so overwhelmed, and it's good to hear from other people that it's just something that, your kids, God knew when he created your kids and you, that this was going to be your need, this is going to be their need. And there's a way to work it out without feeling guilty about it.
Yes, but it is hard, right? That guilt can be so heavy. And I feel like the more we have conversations like this, I just hope and pray that moms can feel some of that burden lift off of our shoulders about all of the shoulds of motherhood.
Right.
That affection piece, children wanting hugs and snuggles and things, and something that I have found is that I'm better at handling those things when I initiate them. So I try to make sure that I'm initiating enough affection for my children who are more seeking of that physical touch. And then it fills their bucket in a way that's not surprising and startling as all of the, the otherwise. So I know that they're getting what they need, and I'm a little less likely to feel that touched out feeling.
Right. Yeah, it really is those surprises, I think, that I had a hard time dealing with. And
it sends us into that fight or flight response. Fight or flight.
Yeah.
And we just don't, I think there's so much knowledge, that power that comes with knowledge, to understand that, we don't have to talk negatively to ourselves about these responses, because no, actually it's normal to be surprised if someone comes up behind you and touches you.
Right.
Like, that's normal. Times however many kids you have, and whether or not you had a hard time before you became a mom, you're probably going to start having a hard time, and it's okay. Here's your permission slip.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for that. We will continue this conversation after a short break.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
Hey there, parents. Are you tired of the babysitter search struggle? Look no further. Welcome to KingdomCareSitters.com, where Christian families connect with like-minded sitters who share their faith.
I was searching for a reliable sitter who understands our faith and family dynamics. With KingdomCareSitters.com, I found the perfect match.
And guess what? You can discover sitter profiles, post jobs, and even schedule and book short-term or long-term care, all on the user-friendly website, KingdomCareSitters.com.
Plus, KingdomCareSitters.com lets you pay securely online. Whether it's date night, work commitments, or just some me time, Kingdom Care's got you covered.
As a sitter, I love being part of this community. I set my own rates, connect with amazing families, and make a difference in their lives.
Are you ready to find your perfect match? Visit KingdomCareSitters.com today, because when faith meets childcare, it's a match made in heaven.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit SPEDHomeschool.com.
So we talk a lot, in general in our society about self-care. How does that really play into what we're talking about and managing all of these sensory inputs for for parents?
I would say self-care is huge. It is a huge piece of us being able to widen, you know, the sciencey way of saying it is the window of tolerance. You know how some days you feel like you can kind of take more than others, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
A way that we can really have more of those I can handle more kind of days where it's like we can be like the big cup instead of the small mug as far as the input we can take is our self-care. And those basic needs, just to take it even a step back to even more elemental, is sleep. You know, making sure we're feeding ourselves, nourishing food, hydration, all of these needs that are so easy to hit the back burner as martyr moms are so important for us being able to tolerate and, dare I say, even enjoy some things that might otherwise be really triggering for us. So understanding that foundation, and it really plays into an eighth sense that we don't talk much about, which is interoception. That's our understanding of what's going on inside our body. So if we are constantly ignoring our basic body signals, like I'm just going to be honest and say going to the bathroom, even when you need to go to the bathroom as a woman. Like we just kind of hit we hit the ignore button, and then we're suddenly surprised that we have moments where we just blow our lid with our kids and we say, well, I didn't feel it coming. Well, we probably didn't feel it coming because that internal sense that would have told you, oh no, I'm breathing shorter, I'm getting hot, my heart rate's faster, I need to do something. You know, we've been ignoring ourselves all day. So we need to be on a very ground level, sort of like, let's take basic needs back and focus on that first.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, we think about self-care, and, you know, for some of us, yes, it can be an afternoon out, but for some of us, it kind of can't be. So what does that kind of self-care look like for us? And I think part of the mindset shift with me came when I realized that if I don't invest in myself up front, then I'm going to have to spend more time recovering and repairing the relationship with my children. And both of those things are going to take time, right? But it's a lot happier for me to take care of myself and do something that nourishes my soul up front than spend that time on the back end fixing some stuff that's gone wrong.
That's very true. And in your health as well. When in 2020, I had breast cancer, and that's when it really hit me that I wasn't taking care of myself and all the things that I had ignored for years. And I had to pay it. I had to pay that time, whether I wanted to or not then. And had I taken the time, like you said, to just be thoughtful and to do it in the front end, I wouldn't have had to take that whole year of my life to basically reset. But it requires some planning. I know I give a whole talk on self-care, and it is a lot about drinking water, breathing, you know, all those things, sitting on the floor with your kids, things that we can do without any extra time, without avoiding our children, but it does require planning and being thoughtful.
Yes, that intention.
Lots of it, because we can just shut down and become like a robot, basically, and live life just based on the demands that are put on us in the day. And then life just consumes us when we do that.
It does. Yeah, we become more of reactors instead of being proactive and being responders to situations and things that are brought along our way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you don't want to go back and look at your life and say, what did I actually do? You know, I wasn't intentional about anything. And all of these opportunities that were put in front of me, I missed because I was just busy trying to keep up. So, yeah. You had mentioned that your room is your retreat. Can you tell us a little bit about that and just how that helps you to model for your kids and how that's translated since you've found like spaces of retreat and rest to be able to just reset and refocus and then go back into the sometimes chaos, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Especially with 5 kids.
Yeah. One of the most helpful pieces has been that the children know what it means when I say that I need a minute to reset. I'm going to be in my room. Please only come get me if you really need me.
Uh-huh.
I think just that visual cue, it's almost like one of the reasons that I have my earplugs here, but one of the reasons I prefer these is because it shows my children what I need without me really having to say anything. So yes, but once I do get into my room, I rely a lot on doing heavy work. And what that means is I'm going to engage my muscles with intention. So it doesn't have to be like I'm going to put on a 20-minute exercise video or anything, right?
Right.
Therapy band, even just stretching that has been very helpful in the past. Sometimes I will lie on the floor and there's a certain position you can use with your heels to kind of rock up and down, which is a very calming sort of, think of like the input that a baby gets when you're bouncing a baby as you're kind of patting their back. It kind of gives the same thing. So it uses your vestibular or your movement system to calm you. Definitely scent. If there's a preferred essential oil or a candle, that can be helpful as well. And you talked about, Peggy, just the visual piece. Sometimes it's enough just to go somewhere where, I don't know, maybe 80% of the room is put together, right? If I can just go somewhere for a few minutes where there won't be Legos to step on and
exactly.
tape everywhere. So sometimes it's just enough to just go and be. And when I'm there, I can focus on doing some deep breathing. But if I'm gone too far, if I've gotten way too overstimulated, usually we can't go straight in and just do deep breathing to calm. Oftentimes
that's a really good point.
You need more support than that. And I used to get so angry when people would say, "But have you tried this breathing
I know,
technique?"
just count to 3.
I'm so over it. I can't even count right now.
Right.
But breathing is helpful. I think that really goes back to the interoception piece of trying to understand what's going on with your body before you get to the boiling point. Because we need different levels of support, kind of at different points along the way. Even in my room, it's a place where I can lean against the wall and walk my feet a few steps forward. And that leaning, the sensation of your back supported against the wall can be calming. And when I'm in that position, I might try some deep breathing or some alternate nostril breathing while I'm in there. Binaural auditory input can be really calming. It could be as simple as finding some on Amazon or YouTube. It doesn't have to be anything particularly therapeutic per se, but the kind of sound waves that it is are very calming. So I think it's important to have thought through those things ahead of time, because when we are getting pushed to that point, we're not.
No, there's no thinking about it at that point. Yes.
Yeah. It's offline. So thinking through that thoughtfully ahead of time, and being willing to try something new, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. You don't know what is going to kind of fill those senses or those voids. For one person, it's going to be maybe jumping on a trampoline, and for another person, it's going to be just sitting, maybe stretching, and kind of moving their body in different ways, or just looking out the window or sitting outside and being in nature. There's just so many different things, but you got to find that thing that really connects with you.
It's funny you should say going outside, because that brought back a memory. Again, children just learning by watching, right?
Yeah.
We live in a place now where I love to go outside, and the kids know what it means when I say I need to go down and feed the chickens. But I've already fed the chickens today, so I think they know. But before we lived here, we lived in a very dense neighborhood, and so I would walk down to the mailbox, and whenever they learned that whenever mom said, I just need to go check the mail, that meant I need to go check it alone, probably. But even that short walk down to the mailbox, and I will never forget the first time a child told me that they needed to go check the mail in the middle of a lesson.
Yes.
And my first thought was like, you don't need to check the mail. And then I realized, oh, wait a second, like this child has learned that this is what mom does when she's feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated. Maybe I should try it too. So
yeah.
Outside,
really
yes.
cool.
Outside, very easy, low maintenance way to help us regulate.
Yes, absolutely. If you got a dog, you can walk the dog.
Yeah.
That's my forced outing every morning, because he looks at me and goes, are we going? Like, okay, time out from my schedule. I will take you for a walk. So
sometimes we need that push though, don't we?
We do. Yes. Because there's just so many demands, and they seem to just be like gnawing at us and going, what about me? Are you not going to get to this today? But the problem is the demands inside of us require the first attention. And we need to be, like we were talking about, intentional about that. Otherwise, we can get through our whole day and go, oh man, I didn't even think about any of that. And then why am I so stressed out? And yeah.
Yeah. I think the problem becomes when we make it a huge to-do instead of finding those micro moments during our day to really meet those needs with intention. It doesn't have to be an hour of quiet time. I know sometimes people say, well, you need to make your kids take a quiet time so you can have time. And yes, but that doesn't always work depending on our child's
right.
needs.
Exactly.
But can we find 5 minutes, 10 minutes more frequently during the day? Maybe we can't find a long stretch, but maybe we can find those micro moments and take advantage of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is really setting boundaries. It's setting boundaries for yourself, for your family, and it's teaching your kids, modeling them how to do that. But I think we feel guilty when we say no to things and yes to ourselves. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when we say no to other things and we say yes to ourselves, I think we have to really get clear on our why first.
Oh, true. Yes.
Because if we don't understand why saying yes to ourselves matters, then it's very hard to make habits and lifestyle changes that are going to, it's like swimming upstream. And so it's already going to take a lot of effort to start with. So we have to make sure that we are really on board with what we're deciding to do and why it matters. And again, for many of us, it is being able to find true connection with our child and to be able to enjoy the freedom that might have brought us to homeschooling to start with. Right. And then all of these things start to just erode that away. So yeah, for sure, getting clear on our why and our motivation. And then once we are, I think maybe it's just that I'm a very pragmatic person, Peggy, but when I really realized that, well, I can either spend this time on the forefront or I can spend it in recovery. That's when the light bulb just clicked with me. And the negative effects it was having on relationships with my children. When I realized that and how much time I was having to spend repairing after the upset, I thought, well, this doesn't make sense. It just this doesn't even make sense that I'm not being more intentional about taking care of myself and communicating my needs to my child. I think sometimes there are so many things that we assume are understood when they're not. We need to be more explicit with what we need, and we need to use few words and we need to choose words that make sense to that child or that person in the situation. But we have to buy into it, right? We have to.
Exactly. Yeah. Because your kids they know you inside and out. They're going to pick it up right away.
Yeah. So I think when we're setting the boundaries, it has to be a boundary that we're willing to hold to. And we're not, I can be idealistic and list off a bunch of things that I think are ideal boundaries. But when the rubber hits the road and I'm feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated, maybe the child is reacting in a way that's overstimulating me because they're yelling.
Right.
Am I really is this really a boundary that I'm going to stick to then? If it's not, then I need to revisit that.
Yeah, that is true. It really does go back to that why, because we can hold on to things so much tighter and with much more resoluteness when we know why we're doing it and we know that the outcomes we want from it. And if it's been proven, over time that we've seen, yes, when I do this, this does happen, like when I go get that calm, everything in my house seems better for the rest of the day. Over time, you kind of have to build up that habit, and it is really hard to get that ball rolling. But once you do,
it is. And starting with smaller goals can be really important. Again, maybe we're not going for 30 minutes of quiet here or calm. Maybe we're going for 5.
Yeah.
And I think, there have been times where I've needed longer time, and I come back to my children and they've done a good job of getting along, during that time. I come back and I thank them for it. And I let them know I'm feeling much better. I feel more calm and able to engage with them better. Thank you so much for helping me so that we can all enjoy the day more. And acknowledging that it really is in many ways a team effort has been really helpful.
Yeah. Everybody has to. But the nice thing is your kids really do want to follow you, even though sometimes we don't think that they do. And so when we take that lead and we show them things that bring us peace, they're gonna, like your one child that went out to the mailbox. They're gonna go, oh. Yeah, I want that. We want to create that feeling inside of our child is mom's got something I don't. How do I get that? That's what you really want them to have, because that's going to make them want it for themselves internally instead of externally trying to reward them to get somewhere where you want them to go.
1000%, especially if we have a child who's resistant to that head-on direction.
Yes.
And will push back from that, which is what I was experiencing when I realized this is getting me absolutely nowhere. In fact, it was making things worse, if I'm being honest with you. All of my red, yellow, greens, all of my, attempts.
Which we're told so much. This is what you need to do to get this result. Yeah. And yet, no.
That added layer of mother and teacher. It's complicated.
It is very much so. Absolutely. Yeah. So what are some pretty simple, straightforward, easy ways that parents could start trying to make those connections with their kids and be purposeful about it in their homeschooling day?
One of my favorite places to start is verbalizing our own experience to our child. And we're starting to learn more about emotions to understand that it really doesn't even start with the emotion word. Like, have you seen the emotion charts?
Yeah.
Okay. It really starts with trying to understand the body sensation first that goes with that emotion.
That makes sense.
So I've gotten a lot of pushback from my children by trying to label their emotions for them. And
yes,
there are so many things that we assume is going on with the child. We have no idea what their like. We know what we see, we know our observations, but we don't know. I mean, sadness. I know I had been sad before and it has looked angry. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
so
Exactly.
complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, I label my own experience and I start with what my body is actually feeling, such as my muscles are really tight right now, or I am clenching my jaw. Like using actual words with my body experience and then pairing emotion with that has been really helpful for my child to see what's going on and really breaking the idea of emotion down a step further. I do use language that makes sense to my children. So at different ages, I've used cartoon characters that are, from their favorite movies. It's changed as they've gotten older, right?
Right.
But,
Yes.
But really putting thought into how do I make this in a language that's understandable for them? And I start with myself instead of labeling my child's experience for them.
Yes. Yeah. I've had a child that was very resistant in the same way, and wish I would have had that knowledge and how to deal with them, because it really ended up, it wasn't until he was 16 and I saw him kind of hunching over. I'm like, what's wrong? And then realizing he actually has 3 discs that slide in his back. He'd been dealing with major pain for years and didn't know how to verbalize that pain was affecting him mentally. It was affecting him socially. It was affecting everything about him. And he was even ignoring it. And so that is so important, because we miss those things so easily because we're so focused on trying to fix or avoid instead.
Yeah. I think right along with that is taking the opportunities to check in with our kids outside of frustrating moments, because it's easy to only focus on these sorts of things when there's a problem. And, no one's really learning when we're upset. We know that with other things. So, right, like we learn not to push through math when someone's crying. Well, let's also not push through talking about our emotions right now when someone's crying. So let's talk about other things. Let's talk about emotional and sensory regulation outside of the stress. And then when stress happens, we can reflect on that later. But sometimes the timing is everything. And, sitting down at the table before we start a lesson, in the morning and then in midday are usually times when I check in with my kids about how they're feeling, giving, and again, not just how are we feeling emotion wise, but how is our body feeling? There's even, there's guided body scans that are available. Kelly Mahler is one of my favorite resources for interoception, but there's visuals to, cue children and adults, starting with our head, really doing a body scan to see how is our body feeling.
That's a great resource, because we have become so much outside of our body because we've used so much technology, and we're, looking at all these resources outside of us, that we almost seem to be this ghost, like going through all of the space instead of really living in the moment anymore and experiencing all of that with all of our sensations. It's like we're just kind of existing. And
it is, it's easy to focus on those senses that tell us about the world around us, but the senses that tell us about our body and certainly the inside of our body, those are very undernourished senses. And especially as moms, the more sedentary we get as adults.
Yes.
And we've got to be really intentional about tuning into and then nourishing those senses.
Yeah, I often ask, because my other business, I have people turning upside down because I'm an aerialist. And I'll ask women who come into my studio, so can you go upside down? Well, I don't know. And, and so, but they haven't like done anything other than sat in a chair for the longest time. And so even to just like lay on the floor, and turn, it's like totally upsetting to their body. and they don't even know it until they do it. So
even simple things, Peggy, I've talked with moms about when we unload the dishwasher, don't unload it like how we would normally unload it, like actually invert your head.
Right. That's,
give your body a chance to have that sensation. Oftentimes it's very alerting, right? That inversion is. And so that can be really helpful when we're thinking about how we can kind of tweak our energy and alertness levels throughout the day. It's just a little change like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Body position. And it doesn't cost you anything. You can do it just sitting down or turning upside down.
You're gonna do it anyway, right?
Right. Yeah. But it's been so long since most people have done things like that. I mean, when's the last time you stood on your head? So think about that. And your kids would think it is a blast that you're doing that. So, you know, what a better way to connect with them than to get into their space and do something fun. So,
and be playful. So that's one of my favorite things is to think, okay, how can we engage our senses in a playful way that meets my child's sensory needs as well as mine? I'm all, like you said, we are stretched so thin as parents and as homeschooling parents that yes, we can do these things, but figuring out how to get them all done together, right? Let's make the most use of our time. That's where we really have to be intentional.
Absolutely. Yes. And it over time, when you realize just how much play and all of those things are important to learning, you're not wasting time. You're actually making your time much more productive by adding those things in and teaching your kids by example, like the things that you've been sharing about, Whitney, these are invaluable things. All my kids are adults now. And the things that I loved that I taught them were not their reading, writing, and math. Those are the things I don't think about at all anymore. Yes, they all got the basics, but the fact that they can have relationships with other people, they can have conversations, that they can express their needs, and they can ask for help and they can help others, and so there's just so many other things that were so much more important, because that is what's really helping them through life, more so than all of the things that they learned in books through the years.
Absolutely. The EQ over IQ for sure. That's totally invaluable.
Yeah. So I would love for you to share, you share the one tool with us, other things you found helpful, and then where our listeners can find more about you and the services that you offer.
Yeah, so some other tools that I found that have been helpful are having headphones that I can find quiet even with my children.
Yes.
And I know that the earplugs seem to kind of be gaining popularity, but if you can tolerate having that sensation of them in your ear, I can still participate with my children and be with them, and they can enjoy running all over the house, playing hide and seek and shrieking. And I can be there and enjoy it without feeling like I'm going to crawl out of my skin.
Right.
It doesn't exclude me, and it doesn't make them feel like they aren't heard. It includes me in what's going on. So having the auditory support has been really helpful for me. The therapy band is super transportable and is a way for me to get that in the car, especially the older our children get, the more time we're spending out and about. So I'm all for things that I can transport. Lots of oral motor input for myself. That's grounding through my jaw, chewing gum, anything that I can suck, like candy or, a mint, that sort of thing can be really calming and on the go. Chewy straws are really helpful for me. I'm kind of dumping on you here at the end, but these are just little things that it's like, there's not many sensory supports that across the board I can say would pretty much help anyone, but that's some of them. For those moments that I just get really, really overstimulated and I'm done, cold can really help me regulate that. So I have a few different ice tools that I keep in the freezer that if I'm not not somewhere where I can just like splash cold water on my face, then I can grab something like that and really, work on the front of my face and just regulate that way. So those are some kind of, handy tools that I probably use pretty regularly. And I wouldn't ignore the benefit of weighted blankets for adults as well as children.
Yes.
I know we use that a lot for our kiddos, but if you don't have a weighted blanket, speaking of being playful, something that my kids have loved doing is piling pillows and blankets on top of me. So I'll come to I might come to my room. I know mommy needs a minute, but first, everybody go grab all the pillows and blankets and come throw them on me on the bed. And so then it's kind of a fun thing, right? Because they're getting to cover me with stuff, and then I get a sensory break as well. I found Kelly Mahler. I think I've mentioned her. She has great resources for interoception. And anything, here's a title, Too Loud, Too Tight, Too Fast, Too Bright. Have you heard that?
I haven't, no.
That's written, what to do if you're sensory defensive in an overstimulating world. So if anyone's a reader, it's very dense, some sciencey stuff in there, but it's very helpful. And lastly, I would say Mona Delahook does a really good job of bringing that self-regulation talk into the world of the child. And she also does talk as well about the parental piece and the importance of the parental self-regulation in that relationship. So she does a great job of taking the sciencey talk and bringing it down to everybody's language and how it applies to that parent-child relationship. So
absolutely.
And of course, more people need to talk about this, and so that's what I do. I coach moms, and I coach one-on-one because so much of this is habit change that we're talking about. It's not going to happen overnight, and it is much easier when it takes place in the course of a relationship with someone. So really unpack what this looks like in a mom's life and in that family situation, because oftentimes it is just so multifaceted. So we deep dive in coaching, and we figure out what's going on and what are ways that we can look at the family as a whole, but with the goal of supporting mom through those moments. So I coach one-on-one, and I also provide workshops as well. And I have some free resources to get started. The website is sensationalmoms.com, and there's 25 ways to get started with self-regulation, as well as 3 things you can do to reset during those I've had enough moments. So when I've headed to the retreat spot, what do you do instead of just sitting there and crying?
Exactly. Been there, done that.
So what are things you can do once you have gotten to that point? So those resources are free and available on the website as well. And I also podcast and talk about my stories and bring other folks that are helpful to help moms along their own sensory and self-regulation journeys.
Oh, that's really cool. And again, that's sensationalmoms.com. We'll have those links for you in the show notes so that you can refer back to them. Just not even figure out how to spell them and just click on them. we'll get that figured out for you. Peggy. So thank you so much, Whitney. This has been such a good it's a conversation that's well overdue on this show. And I just want to thank you for speaking truth into this and sharing your story and being transparent, and just giving moms and dads hope out there when they feel like life has just overwhelmed and blown them over and they don't know what to do within the chaos of their own home, and how to kind of bring that back to a place of peace. But thank you for all that you shared and all that you do to help families. It's a blessing.
Thank you, Peggy. I've really enjoyed it. I'm just doing what I wish I had, right? That's so many of our stories.
Yes, absolutely. That's mine too. So, So yeah. Well, thank you all for tuning in today's episode of Empowering Homeschool Conversation. If you're looking for more resources, support, and encouragement on your homeschooling journey, be sure to visit Homeschool Heroes, powered by SPED Homeschool. At Homeschool Heroes, you'll find free downloads, a supportive community of parents, homeschool-friendly providers, and expert consultants ready to help you teach your child with confidence. Plus, explore our tools, products, and services designed to simplify your homeschooling efforts, all from a trusted nonprofit that understands the unique challenges of homeschooling children with learning differences. Join us at spedhomeschool.com to find answers to your biggest homeschooling questions and develop your homeschooling superpowers with our resources, inspirational articles, and a supportive community that's here for you every step of the way. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time. And we are going to talk about homeschooling hacks for neurodivergent families with a mom of 8 who has kids all over the spectrum and everywhere else, who has a lot of wisdom to share. So you'll want to come back for that episode next time. So thanks, everybody, and we will see you next time right here on Empowering Homeschool Conversations. I want to take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.